All right, the 10th Sunday of Ordinary Time. Who's excited? As Father Dan Zach used to say, one of those ordinary old Sundays. Maybe this is like a nerdy priest thing, but, after Lent and Easter, kind of the first time we put green back on, it's kind of like, okay, that's 5 more months of this, 6 more months. Of course, the word ordinary time, a little different meaning than we think of it. It just means ordered Sundays that aren't in a particular season. Now, they used to be called the Sundays after Pentecost, which would be cool, like reminding us that, we're supposed to go out as a church, on fire, animated by the Holy Spirit. But here we have the 10th Sunday of Ordinary Time. And maybe especially as we come to church week after week, it does become kind of ordinary, maybe a little run-of-the-mill. Of course, no Sunday Mass needs to be ordinary, because Jesus is never ordinary. Jesus is never just sort of run-of-the-mill. It took a while for people to figure that out. Even his relatives, we see he's going out, he's healing people, he's setting people free from demons, and they think he's gone mad. Now, at this time, individuals were considered different than we know them. Like, we have our own life, and we can do what we want, and all this kind of stuff. Especially back then, an individual's identity was very much wrapped up in their family, in their clan. Your identity was just a part of a larger group, and so everything you did reflected on them. And so when Jesus was kind of going off the reservation, so to speak, they're like, we got to get this guy just back making coffee tables, because this just doesn't seem to be a good look for us. And even the powers that be, I guess, we see that the scribes from Jerusalem come, so they bring in the big guns to kind of weigh in, and they're like, it's possessed by Beelzebul. He's setting people free from demons, or like by the power of demons, he casts out demons. And first Jesus is like, bro, it doesn't even make sense. Then he kind of opens up the rest of our gospel what he really came to do, and the extraordinary things he has come to do. First, at the end of our gospel passage, as we see, Jesus says, those who do the will of God are my brother and sister and mother. That is to say, he's expanding that whole definition of family, not just to the clan that you belong to, but ultimately his desire to have everyone come be a part of his family. His disciples aren't just students, they're his family. They talked about last week at Corpus Christi, like he wants to make us his own flesh and blood. And not only does he want to bring us into his family, we see too that he does come to set us free as part of that. So we have this little weird kind of parable in there. We talked about no one can plunder a strong man's house unless you bind him up, and then you can plunder his house. Well, the strong man in this parable is the devil. Of course, Jesus, in giving this parable, kind of makes himself the stronger one. That he can be the one that can tie up that power that just sort of seems to get us. And then he can take back what belongs to him, the members of his family, you and me. And in doing this, he really fulfills what we heard in the first reading. He fulfills Genesis 3:15, when God says to the serpent, I will put enmity, I can't even say it, opposition, hostility between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. So we think of the offspring of Eve, it's foreshadowing of Jesus. And he says, you'll strike at his heel, a place that's kind of vulnerable, but he will crush your head. This is kind of known as the proto-gospel, like the first gospel, that even after kind of the fall and things just sort of went south, God already has this plan to bring a salvation back to his people, and restoration and wholeness and freedom. I was thinking about the fall. Go back to the time of creation where God made everything and Adam and Eve, and things were great, and they enjoyed every good thing, and they walked with God in the cool of the evening, and they had no want, and they were just free from any concern. Of course, there was that one tree in the middle of the garden that they couldn't eat. Something had to be there, because as people made in the image and likeness of God, it means in part that we have intellect and we have will. So we have the ability to know things, and then we have the ability to make choices. And if we didn't have the ability to make choices, we wouldn't have will. We'd just be puppets. So God had to set up this opportunity for them to make a bad choice in order for them to really make good choices. But the serpent strikes at their heel. He strikes at a vulnerability, a weakness. And he speaks a word into Adam and Eve that says, God just doesn't want you to eat from the tree because he'll know you'll be more powerful than him. And he's just kind of that way. So he wants to keep something from you. And you really can't trust that he's good. You really can't trust that he's going to provide for you. So you just got to literally take life by grab it for yourself. And of course they do that, which leads to a separation from their trusting, loving relationship with God. And then the weight all that comes to bear, and then they're in hiding. And the Lord, though, comes to look for them. And he says, where are you? Of course, he knows where they are. He's God. He knows everything. And maybe we can imagine God saying, I know where you stand, silent in the trees. And Adam's like, yeah, that's where we stand, silent in the trees, standing cowardly. That this mistrust and everything has entered into this relationship. I think it's so powerful for us too, that question, where are we? Where are we in our life? Because we know, we have a sense deep down that something has nipped us in our weakness. That something has struck at our heel, so to speak. Because in our fallen nature, we have something that keeps us from living as God has made us to be in the fullness of life. That's kind of Adam. He's kind of thinking, I'm not what I was intended to be. Who here wants to be less than they were made for? I think we all do. We all want to be, we have a sense deep down that we're made for more, but there's things that get in the way. Maybe it is some particular sin in our life, but even that's just usually a symptom of some other kind of need that we're trying to get at that we've missed the mark at. Maybe we're living out of a wound from our past, this experience of rejection or abandonment, powerlessness, hopelessness, confusion, despair. All that can wrap us up into fear. Maybe we're living out of a fear of missing out. Maybe we're living in a spirit of comparison. Maybe we find ourselves that we've sort of put up these walls and built up a false image in order to put up a good face as we go through life. Or maybe we've started to believe lies about who we are as people who are part of God's family. All these different ways that in our weakness we can allow something else to creep in. Yet God comes to look for us and to bring us back. So I love that line in our reading from Genesis 3, and it's easy to gloss over. But as we know that maybe God has something in store for us, and that's maybe even why we're here today. That line of Adam, I heard you. I heard you, but I was afraid because I was exposed, and so I hid. It can be hard to face our stuff, and so we just kind of swallow it sometimes, or we don't want to bring it to the light of day, or to bring it to the Lord and trust in His mercy and fullness of redemption. And so we can say with Adam, I heard you, but I was afraid because I was exposed, and so I hid. The Lord has always more in store for us. He wants to bring us into healing and freedom. He wants to be the stronger one who can tie up what keeps us bound, and so we can be let go, and to walk in the freedom of children of God. So here on the 10th Sunday of Ordinary Time, Maybe today, friends, wherever, if you're in a particular place in your life, this does not have to be an ordinary Sunday. As we encounter Christ here in the Mass today, like literally encounter Christ here in the Mass today, maybe this is a day where we can let the extraordinary power and life of Jesus reach into our life in a particular way, to continue to renew our inner self day by day, and then help us to restore that God-given glory for which you and I were made and that we're meant to walk in each day.